Welcome to My Creative Corner 3, a podcast about quilting, creativity, crafting, and life in my northern town. Come back weekly and we'll chat about all the things that I'm working on. My name is Vicki Holloway, and welcome to the podcast. Welcome to not spring. No, not today. And the 45th parallel, we got no April Fool's joke here. We got 5 inches of snow about between 8 o'clock in the morning until the afternoon, with a tiny bit of freezing rain in there with 30-mile-an-hour winds. And I'm hoping this is the end of winter. We always joke that there's always one more snow in April and occasionally in May. So we fixed the snowblower when it broke in the end of February, because we figured that if we didn't fix it, that for sure meant that it would snow terribly throughout March and into April. So we fixed the snowblower, and now today we might use it. Snow plow trucks are out, and yeah, so my new haircut I got on Monday of this week. I had her take off several inches, and I'm embracing this natural curl and the gray that's in it. However, my hair has been windblown in and out of the house a few times to go into work and then come home at lunch and then go to work. And today, if you're watching this on YouTube, I can only deal with so much of my hair and doing hair and makeup. So this is the view of a windblown Thursday, April 11th. So this week on the podcast, I wanted to talk about a couple of things that I have been thinking about, because I haven't done a whole lot to show you. On the forefront of my mind has been the April Quilt Challenge. This is the 30-day challenge that my Facebook group of My Creative Corner 3 has been working on, and we're just doing some quilting, 15 minutes, as many days of the week as you can. I've already missed 2 in April because I had company on the weekend, and that was last weekend, and I didn't put any quilting time in because I spent all day Saturday, it felt like, either at the quilt shop or preparing for the foundation paper piecing. Oh, that's a tongue twister. The foundation paper piecing class of the quilt that I designed called Happy Hour. I have found out that after making the quilt with the class, we did great. We had a 2-hour class that went to 2.5 hours, and everyone picked a beverage glass, and most people picked the coffee cup or Moscow Mule cup, which is what I originally designed it to be. But you could make it whatever you want, and it's so cool, all of the different fabrics that people brought and picked, and they're great. I will put the blocks in the show notes from the students. One lady fussy cut a cheetah face with a cheetah fabric and a pink background. It was sharp. Another person picked a copper coffee cup, and one was polka dotted, and wine glasses with batiks that had all kinds of swirl in the wine. It was great. I used grunge and solids in the one I made, and now I'm thinking I really want to make another one with all of these different types of prints in it, because it just gives it a whole different vibe. So that was Saturday, and then we watched the national NCAA basketball championship, in the playoffs all the way up until Monday, which was the national championship game for the men, and Sunday evening was the national championship game for the women. So my mom came up for the weekend and took the class, and she and I love basketball, and my husband likes watching the finals, so we had a great time. So are you a basketball fan? I get into it during March especially, but I watched Michigan State and University of Michigan through the fall because I'm a person who likes to know who's on the team and who the coach is and their style, and some of the Big Ten basketball teams that they play throughout the year, so I can kind of feel what the rivalries are and things like that. And it was very sad when both Michigan teams went out, but Michigan State went far, and that was pretty exciting to watch. I am a sports nut. Now I'm into the sports desert until the fall when football starts up again. Not much into spring sports, and there's not a whole lot that I watch on TV at this time of year. Occasionally we'll watch soccer or rugby, but it's not something I really get into. So that was my reason why I didn't do my 15 minutes a day. But I am discovering that fancy quilting panels is instant gratification. I've done several panels that I was stuck on. I didn't know what to do, and I thought, well, I'll just load them on the frame. One was the long, skinny skeleton. He'll go on one of my doors for Halloween, and he's really adorable. I need to bind him. The next quilt that it's a panel, it's a yardage. It's 44 inches wide, and I think it's about 44 inches the width of fabric, 20 inches wide. And it's Michael Miller's Sarah Jane line, is Sarah Jane Peter Pan. And it has the London skyline in a silhouette with Peter Pan, Wendy, Michael, and John. I couldn't remember all their names right off. I had to think about it. It's been a long time. But all I did was elongated swirls that echoed and echoed and echoed, and there were these big, billowy, puffy clouds. It's still upstairs on the frame. I didn't bring it down. And I'll try to put a picture on the show notes of it. And it's really cool as I have a blue one, which is the one I just did, but I also have a pink version. And I think that one will be even maybe more cool because it's not as dramatic in the coloration of the pink and the cream versus this blue and the cream. So I think the quilting might even be a little more dramatic. I'm going to try the exact same style of quilting on that. So that's been fun. And then I also quilted a couple mini quilts before the April challenge. And I'm going to load one of my friends' quilts, and it's an antique quilt, and it's so pretty. It's on point, and I can't recall right off the top of my head there's a blank square, and then it's like a 9-patch with a couple of fancy pieces in it. And I've been really thinking about what to quilt in it, and I think what I've decided is I'm not going to do custom feathers or anything on it, but I'm going to do small edge to edge little feathery pieces. I've done this before, and they really are cute, but it's still an overall pattern. And I have to say, I did use a ruler on the spider webs, and my fingers just cannot take too much ruler work and drawing and that kind of stuff. So we're going to do edge to edge on it, which is really what she wanted, and I'm not going to make it more complicated than it is because, you know, I am an overthinker and I can make things extremely complicated sometimes. That's my plan. So once I get Peter Pan off the frame, then I'm going to do that quilt. But I have the Sarah Jane Peter Pan economy block quilt back from the quilt shop, and I'm going to try to make a quilting plan for that. And rustling through all of my stuff, I have found that I have several of my own tops, and I even found ones that needed to be have binding put on them. I thought they were all caught up. I have plenty to do. Which leads me to my little topic of, man, I have had a rough time getting my routine in order here. And I feel like I've just got all of these balls in the air sometimes, and I'm not finishing anything. And some of this, the renovation started that in December, where like nothing was getting done, lots of things being started, but nothing done, and everything was out of place. And I got things back into place, but then my husband's job really has been changing his start time every day. And they've tried a couple of things to, you know, for manpower and containment of overtime, where he'll start earlier or start later. And for a long time, I want to say about 10 years now, he has gone to work really early in the morning, like between 6 and 7 in the morning, and I go to work at 8:30. So that gives me time to run the long arm machine when there's nobody in the house trying to watch TV or rest, and I can run a sewing machine. And then in the evening, I usually do quiet things like handwork, like embroidery or knitting. I've been on a knitting jag recently. And still working on the same projects. Nothing to talk about there. My Gryffindor scarf has been my evening companion. And I just have been out of rhythm because sometimes for the last several weeks, he's been going to work at 8 o'clock in the morning. So that means I'm trying to reverse what I did, like maybe do handwork and computer work in the morning and then run the long arm later in the day. And I'm so tired and my hip is hurting it's got arthritis and bone spurs. And by the end of the day, it's really sore. So trying to feel like I'm out of rhythm, just this whole thing has not been working as far as me getting things done in my routine. And I just want to say that's how I get things done. If you've listened to the podcast for any length of time, you know that I work in 15-minute increments. That's why I chose the challenge to be 15 minutes. In the morning, especially when I'm working on customer quilts, it's a little bit longer than 15 minutes, but I do things in 15-minute chunks and then move to something else, like maybe press it for 15 minutes, load the quilt on, and then do a row. Maybe a row takes me 15 or a half hour, depending on how big the quilt is. But that's how I do things, and I feel like I've been disjointed in my routine. I clean in the same type of things. I mean, I've had my job for nearly 20 years where I go to work at 8:30, I take a lunch hour, come home, and so trying to deviate from that routine, like when I have to go to other offices to fill in, makes it hard. But it also makes it hard, like, in hard weather days like today. I did come home for lunch, but sometimes you can't. And that makes me feel off for a day, but I've not had it an extended period of time like this winter. So we're trying to figure out a routine, trying to figure out how I can get my work in with my long arming, and I've decided after teaching the class on a pattern that was my own, I loved that, but I don't know that I want to do tons of that this year. I did 3 or 4 quilts that I designed, and 2 of them were in the magazines last year, and 1 will be this summer. And it was a lot of work. Oh my gosh, it was a lot of work for very little return. And I'm just kind of like thinking that designing, I love to make them for myself, but to write it out in a pattern is just too much brain power, and it's pretty hard to do. But I love to play around on Electric Quilter 8 and make my own things from a bare bones pattern in not so many words. And that's what I'm going to plink around this year as I work on my mini quilts. So the routine, I live, breathe, and thrive on a routine. And generally, it's getting that. I'm really a morning person now, which is a funny thing that happened on the way to menopause for me, as I have become a morning person. And I like to do my quilting and all of the sewing in the morning when I'm fresh and sipping on a cup of coffee, and just I feel like I'm in my element. And I've been not doing that kind of stuff in the morning. So some of the work I've done, when you look at it later, you're like, ooh, what happened there? You must have been really tired, or, oh, your sugar must have been off, or, was a long day at the office, right, when you did that. And I've had to take a few things apart. So anyway, that's been my winter. And winter really can be difficult up here anyway, and it's been long, and it's been out of rhythm. So I'm going to try to figure out the new routine. Don't know what it's going to be like yet, because lots of things are happening at my husband's office. And my studio for long arming is my bedroom, and it's at the foot of my bed, and that's fine, because it doesn't matter where in this house a sewing machine is, or even my Cricut. It's pretty loud and echoes, and I just don't want to keep people awake or be rude about running a machine. You try to be nice and live together. So we'll work it out. Not that it's causing any conflicts, but I need to work it out in my mind. So that's mine. So do you live and die by routines? I do. I function way better that way, and my ADHD brain functions way better that way, in super short, focused increments of time. And that's why my Creative Corner 3 my little tagline is one stitch, one block, one row at a time. And I really like time leveraging. So that's been kind of my rough go of it. And then I'm working on my April challenge for Step Into Your Art. Well, it's a rough challenge for me. Oh my gosh, is it rough. So this is a little bit of a story. I am not a trained color person in choosing fabrics, colors. I've always gone by instinct. So this month's challenge is using a color wheel. And I think we're supposed to use complementary colors. Maybe even split complementary. I can't remember 100%, but I've been thinking about it. So I have a quilting group that I go to. We're not a guild. It's just a bunch of friends who are my mom's age, and they invited me to come a couple of years ago. So I've been meeting with them once a month, and I haven't gone in a while. I've been kind of self-conscious. I don't know what it is. Do you ever get that way? I mean, as an introvert, maybe that's part of just my just getting out and show and tell, and sometimes it can be hard with other people. And this time I was looking for help in my English paper piecing, and that has totally dropped like a bomb. I'm telling you, I haven't picked it up. I stopped at the beginning of March, so I'm several weeks behind on my temperature quilt. And I used white thread on blue, and it shows, but it was the thin thread, and so they told me to try to pick thread that matches, and I was taking too many stitches, and now I feel all self-conscious about it. Like, I know I'm learning, and it was a beginner thing, and they were like, why are these colors all jammed up like this? And you didn't, it was a temperature quilt. And no, they're not 100% in order, but that's okay. So that was the hard, squeamishy part of meeting in the quilt group, is sometimes I don't do a good job of explaining myself in a crowd, I guess, and trying to give an artist statement of why I'm doing what I'm doing, and everybody looks at me like I've totally lost my mind. And well. But the good news about meeting is that it is encouraging, and it's in an uplifting environment, and there are a couple other people in the group who are modern, but of the 12 of us, only 2 or 3 do modern. Everybody else is 100% traditional. Even though they think they're a little more modern, they're totally not. They're traditional or contemporary traditionalists, and I ride the fence of modern, and I'm playing around with art quilts. So with this color challenge, I was fretting. I've been fretting about it for 11 days since the announcement of the challenge for Step Into Your Art. And Sandy, don't take this wrong, but I don't know anything about the color wheel. And I have tried. I even bought a color wheel years ago, and I can't find it. I think I gave it away or threw it away. Or maybe it's buried in my stuff because, I can't find anything. I'm slowly digging out, but I can't find it. And I need to start writing down when I loan people or give things away, because then I think maybe I have it. Do you do that? I'm terrible. So, well, the lady who is really good at color and English paper piecing had 2 color wheels. And my friend Alice from work wanted one, and I picked them both up, and I took the antique one. It's called Dial a Color. And what is amazing is on the back, there's, in a very simple form, it tells you about color and complementary and how to use a number system, which works for my brain way better than the other color wheels that just have these lines, and my brain goes, oh, it's spaghetti, I can't see it. So I'm going to work on a split complementary, I think, and if it's not 100% the challenge, Sandy will forgive me at the Quilt Cabana. But you look at color number 1, 6, and 8. Okay, 1, 6, and 8 on the color wheel. So I want to go with the teal color. What's interesting is I naturally picked orange to go with it. Yay, that works on the color wheel. That is number 6 of my number 1, which is teal. But then the color 8 is red. I'm like, are you kidding me? no, I read that backwards. Red is 6 and orange is 8. But I thought red and orange together with the teal? I don't know about that. I would have gone this, maybe this is why my quilts sometimes make no sense to people. Because naturally I would have gone with the aqua and the orange, but then I might have wanted to pick purple. Totally not in according to the color wheel. Doesn't really work. And maybe that's why some of my quilts always feel like they kind of don't hit the mark. So I'm going to work on this color study. Now the good thing was my friend Alice subscribed to Quilting Arts magazine, and I've had about 3 or 4 issues in my office, and every once in a while in between things in downtime I'll flip through them at work, and I found a wonderful article that I read on my lunch hour, of course, on the color wheel, and it was very inspiring and it made more sense of what I'm doing. So I'm going to show you some of the fabric on YouTube, and otherwise you'll have to go to the show notes, but I have the Paintbrush Studio aqua teal green color that I bought at QuiltCon. Then I have orange that I picked from QuiltCon, and I've been loving this bright clear orange, and I always have that on hand, and I bought more of that. And then red. I'm like, ooh, I hate working with red. I'll be honest, I hate it. Red makes me feel uncomfortable and angry a lot of times. And I think red is hard to work with sometimes. So I have a few scraps, a Kona red and some other red pieces. And I thought, well, maybe that looks like it goes with the color wheel. And then I looked and I'm like, whoa, there's a tiny bit of orange on this red print with my orange and blue. And I'm like, really, this works? I can't believe it. Like years of people studying art and teaching it at advanced degrees, and I didn't believe that it would work. It works! So I'm going to work on my Step Into Your Art Challenge with this fabric pull, and it's due by the end of the month, and I'm pretty excited. I think I'm going to do some improv-esque type of things, but I also want to try using a little bit of fabric paint and maybe try some Sew Illustrated types of techniques on this. I have the book Sew Illustrated by Kristen Nesser and Minky Kim, and it's challenge. I tried it a little bit ago and I didn't read all the directions and watch all the videos close enough. But the quilt shop has just started carrying the brand name Steam-A-Seam, and I've got some other knockoff kind, and it didn't stick. And so they're applique, and then you outline it raw edge, and you outline stitch it with brown. And I used black, and it was too harsh. I have some brown I found in my thread collection, and I thought, wouldn't it be super fun to do some kind of way cool art inspired Sew Illustrated in my teal, orange, and red. So dial a color. I have no idea when this was made because the copyright, it just says see copyright. I'm assuming that this is from the late 60s, early 70s. It kind of has a psychedelic vibe to it. I love it. It's old, it's simple, and the graphics that are kind of mod and cool. And actually, it's the first time I've actually got a color wheel, and it made sense because of all of these simple directions and reading the article in the Quilting Arts. Now, there's another thing I read in Quilting Arts I really want to do, but the story was so touching because it's about 2 women who are totally connected, and I can't think of which issue it was right off the top of my head, and I will try to link the proper issue. But if you can get a copy of Quilting Arts, and I think it was a couple of issues ago, but it was about this lady who does art quilts, and she has a family relative who has a developmental disability. And she worked with her for a long time, and somehow they, over the years, live in different states. And she worked with her on writing. And over time, her writing skills aren't worked on all the time where she's at. And so when she sees her, she'll give her paper and pen and she'll say, "Can you write your name for me?" Which evolved to, as they meet and chat and have visits. It sounds like her verbal skills are pretty limited, but they communicate through just being together. And she has her writing, and her writing is her own little language. She doesn't use letters, but she does what they call scribbles in the article, but they really are more complex than that. Some are super simple, and what this lady does is she embroiders them. She copies them onto fabric. She embroiders them, puts them together in art quilts, and by the end, I'm like, oh my gosh, her artistic mind is so great. So she looked at in the meeting. She said, "Will you spell your name for me?" while she was chatting with another friend. And she started to spell it. She had the first 3 letters, and then it kind of fell apart to her own syntax, basically. And she said, "This is what happens to a woman on her way to menopause. She starts out okay and then kind of falls apart." I laughed so hard. I thought it was fantastic. The article was awesome. I'm not going to do too many more spoilers, but you should read it if you can. The connection between these two people and preserving the woman's writings, doodles and stuff are amazing. And I thought, now I could do this on a small scale. This is a lifelong project between these two women and collaborating. But I thought, wouldn't that be fun to like get your grandkids art and do? I know people who have embroidered that, but I'm like, even just little swirly doodles of my own and translate that into an art quilt. Maybe there's a challenge in there for myself after the Step Into Your Art challenges finished this year. So those were some wonderful things that I have been encouraged by today, and maybe it'll help me get the sewing mojo back. The piecing part hasn't been there. I've been working pretty hard on learning my Cricut, so it's like I don't have tons to show for it. Though this week I learned how to use the rotary blade on the Cricut and cut out a bunch of felt circles, and I want to make like not a garland or bunting, but it's like a wall of beads, remember from the old days? Well, doing a wall of stiff felted circles on strings, and I thought that would be way cool for curtains or to give a modern feel, maybe even a short one. You know, in the old days in Victorian houses, they to cut down on drafts, they put like curtains and valance across. They had special names, and I can't pull it up right now. But I thought, no, wouldn't be that would be cool for a modern vibe. My doors are pretty tall, and I have tall ceilings in this house, and there is room for a little tiny polka dot feel felt valance at the top of the door. We'll see how tall my husband he's pretty tall. Maybe he would hit his head, but I'm going to work on something like that because I think it will be cool. And it'd be a good project for me to learn how to use the Cricut and then learn all of these different types of products that you can use. The other thing I want to try is to cut balsa wood and make like little puzzles and all kinds of art things you can do. So I'm very, very excited. Maybe that's stealing some of my energy away from piecing so much. And the other part is I inventoried my quilts. I have a lot of them, and I'm trying to store them responsibly and use them responsibly. And, you know, there just comes a point as to how many quilts do I really need in this house. I'm rapidly approaching 100. And, yeah. Well, I've got them stored in totes and folded in all the wrong ways. I try to keep them out of the sunlight. I rotate them in and out in use. And I don't know. So if you got any tips on storing quilts in a house with no closets, because remember I talked about that last week, and nobody had any great ideas on how to use a 2-foot wide by 6-foot deep closet. Seriously, come on, people. I need ideas. You know, so I'm thinking of smaller projects. That's why 2019 is my year of making mini quilts and catching up on the tops I made last year that need to be quilted. I'm looking at more sewing, like using his projects, like pencil bags and cosmetic bags and just kinds of fun things like that. And I want to make an apron. So my mom last weekend brought up a bunch of patterns that she didn't want anymore, and one was the church lady apron. I want to make that, and I'm going to see if it's big enough to cover me up properly. But that's another project I want to do. Now, that's a sewing project, but it's not quilt related. I think I can do it. I think I can. And I hope I don't have to get my serger threaded, because that has been the bane of my existence with that serger. And I don't serge enough to want to upgrade. So, yeah, I'll have to get the tutorials out on how to thread that thing. Let's see, what is it sitting right here? It's a Janome serger, but it's a low-end beginner type, and I'm having trouble with keeping the fourth looper thread in there properly. When it works great. When it doesn't work, it's maddening, kind of like technology. So I want to say thank you, everyone, for listening to the podcast. Remember, you can support the podcast by buying me a virtual cuppa. I love coffee and tea, and you can go to my website, mycreativecorner3.wordpress.com. You'll notice that I have a static page on the front now. Be sure you can look all over several places. You can click to see right to the blog, and at the bottom of the page is recent posts. If you click to the blog, you will find the store, the links, buy me a virtual cuppa on a big page, but also at the top of the page of the static page there in front, or the home page, it has all links to the store and buy me a cuppa, or be a patron, or sign up for the newsletter, all of those things. I really appreciate the people who have also taken the time to leave me iTunes reviews. Since my computer got wiped in the fall because it crashed, I had trouble getting into iTunes, and I've looked at them recently, and I can't access all of the reviews that are on there, but I appreciate the kind words that people have said in the iTunes review. And I thank you, because sharing makes it so where people can find us, and I would love to have a very active group community where we can chat and talk and maybe share ideas about how to arrange closets and talk about creativity and crafting and all of the things. So right now in my creative season is probably not the flow state, but more in the working on the ideas that I have written down. And that happens to me seasonally. So now I'm in the quilting flow for free motion quilting, and in the crafting and stuff, I'm learning, and I'm getting into my routine, and I am looking at the list of projects and all of the things that I have mapped out for this quarter, and I'm making it, and it's working, and I'm getting there. But the routine part has to get more nailed down, and I would like to work on the Step Into Your Art Challenge, starting that tomorrow. Maybe if I can get to the quilt shop and get some steam-a-seam, because what I have didn't hold, and I have no idea what it was. I think I bought it at a craft store, and I don't even know. So overall, I really, really, really thank you for listening. And I'm not going to let this howling wind and snow stop me from having a productive evening. It is about supper time here, and the daylight is staying longer, which is also helping me to get into a more creative flow. Oh, it's hard to work in the dark, isn't it? Anyway, everyone have an absolutely wonderful week. We'll be back next week, and check out the show notes at mycreativecorner3.wordpress.com. Quilt on, everyone. This is the winter that will never end. Poor Robin. I know, he wants to go under the porch. My car filled up with snow during my lunch hour. Yay!